now call on Matt Casey, if you'll please introduce yourself and share your bill introduction.
Yes, thank you. I have a bill introduction, Madam Chair. It is RS 0903, dealing with the administration of the Truck Driver and Motorcycle Training Fund.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, seeing no opposition, thank you for your bill introduction to the committee.
Thank you.
Are there any other bill introductions? Seeing none, we will now move into our hearing for Senate Bill 62. That is amending the standards for school-administered vision screenings for students and establishing the Kansas Children's Vision Health and School Readiness Commission. We will turn to our revisers for an overview of Senate Bill 82.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So current law provides that the governing body of any school must provide each student with a basic vision screening at least once every 2 years. Senate Bill 62 would remove the basic Senate Bill 62 would remove the basic vision screening every 2 years requirement and would instead require that vision screenings be provided annually for children with disabilities aged 3 through 5 who are receiving special education and related services, at least once each school year for students in grades kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 5th, 7th, and 10th grades. And then within the first year of admission for any new student who enrolls in a school district or accredited non-public school. Both public schools and accredited private schools would be subject to the requirements of this bill regarding vision screenings. And each accredited non-public school would be required to provide basic vision screenings unless the parent requests those vision screenings be provided by the school district in which the student resides. If that request is made, the school district would be required to provide that vision screening. Senate Bill 62 would also require that any school-administered vision screenings be performed by a vision screener, such as a school nurse, nurse's designee, or other person trained to administer vision screening tests to students in the state. And the screeners would be required to follow the most recent state vision screening guidelines for performing those screenings. And then finally, Senate Bill 62 would establish the Kansas Children's Vision Health and School Readiness Commission to ensure the implementation of the requirements of this statute. Members of the commission would be appointed by the state board, and they would include an optometrist, ophthalmologist, a representative of a health organization dedicated to preventing blindness, a representative from the Department of Education, a representative from the Department of Health and Environment, a school nurse, a public health nurse, and one school administrator. And the duties of the commission would be to oversee the revision of state vision screening requirements and guidelines at least once every 7 years, provide standardized vision screening referral letters and eye professional examination reports, identify state resources to offer free or low-cost eye exams for students who are unable to afford such exams, and to establish a system to collect data concerning vision screening results and outcomes of referrals, and issue an annual report to the Secretary of KDHE and the Commissioner of Education. The bill would take effect upon publication in the statute book. And finally, in a familiar tale, this is a reintroduction of a bill from last session. That bill did pass the House and was heard in the Senate committee, but never fully made it through the legislative process. And I will be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? Seeing none, let's move on to our testimony. We have today with us Todd Fleischer. He is the CAE Executive Director for Kansas Optometric Association. Sorry, I stumbled on that, but thank you.
Happens all the time. So, my name is Todd Fleischer. I'm the Executive Director of the Kansas Optometric Association and also the Eye Care Council. The KWA represents optometrists around the state. The Eye Care Council actually represents optometrists around Kansas and also around the country that participate in our See-Learn Children's Vision Learning Program. Sorry, I'm getting feedback there. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you today to talk about Senate Bill 62 on behalf of the Kansas Vision Coalition. 10% of vision problems, or 10% of preschoolers have a vision problem, 20% by kindergarten. By high school graduation, that number's up to about 30%. And with 80% of learning a result of visual processing, it's an important link to make sure that vision problems are, they don't go undetected, so that it doesn't have any effect on a child's ability to achieve their academic potential. With that in mind, Envision out of Wichita, the organization that serves low vision and blind individuals, actually convened a meeting in 2017 of stakeholders that were dealing with children's vision issues around the state. So Lions Club were involved, school nurses, administrators, I think Department of Health and Environment were there. We were involved, there was ophthalmology involved, to talk about some of the challenges they were facing. How do we make sure that kids are getting screened? They're making sure that they get the care that they need. They're getting referred on to the appropriate resources if they do have problems, those kind of things. So that meeting happened in 2017, and out of that meeting, they came up with a couple of recommendations. And the first one was to update the screening guidelines. They actually hadn't been updated since 2004. And technology has changed a lot since 2004, and there really hadn't been a mechanism to do that previously. So they actually sat down and used a panel of experts, both nationally and within the state, to identify what the screening guidelines should be. The thing that they really focused on is making sure that everything was evidence-based, that there wasn't a test that was being done just because it was the cheapest test or what was being sold as the most efficient test. There had to be proof that it actually was effective for the audience that they were using it on. One of the examples of this was there are some photo screening devices that a lot of Lions clubs and others use to screen children in their community. Great service. The research actually shows that those are really effective for kids on 6 age and under. There's really no research beyond age 6 to prove that they're effective in that regard. So the guidelines reflect now that those should only be used with that population or those kids that are older but may not be able to do the traditional testing that's done. The other thing is there is reference in the statutes to the Snellen chart. Well, that's not necessarily the current procedure, but it's something that's been done for a long time. So they wanted to make sure that all the tests that are out there are actually age appropriate and there's evidence to back it up. So that's really, the guidelines were introduced in 2018, and actually schools began using those in 2019. So with that accomplished, the next step of that process is that they were concerned because the statute, as we heard earlier, requires that screenings be done at least every other year. But there's not consistency among districts. Some schools do it kindergarten, second grade, fourth grade. Others do it kindergarten, first, third, fifth. And as students move from district to district, there's a potential that they could be missed. And also in practice, a lot of schools do any child when they come into the district. So they just trying to make sure that it's consistent across the state. So no matter where a child was coming from or going to, those screenings were done on the same schedule. They also looked at data, and the healthcare professionals involved felt it was important that instead of targeting, kindergarten second, they really needed to focus on primary ed as the first stop. They needed to hit it every year because the children are developing a lot there. They're learning to read, and an undetected vision problem at that age could have a lasting effect on their ability to learn down the road. So they really felt like it was important to do that. The other thing, just sort of anecdotally, I mentioned earlier that we have the See Learn program, and we do a lot of work with children's vision, both in Kansas and other states. One of the things that I've heard over the years is that parents are really upset when they find out at age 5, 6, 10 that their child had a vision problem. And they're like, how did I not know that? My child never told me that they couldn't see. Well, kids don't know what they don't know. They assume everybody sees the world the same way they do. So if we can make sure that they get a screening the first 3 or 4 years of school to make sure that those problems are detected, then they can get referred on if they need to be. So that's really what they were trying to make sure that, so it didn't increase the number of screenings that are being done for their school age population. They just kind of clustered them at the beginning and then spread them out so that it would be more reflective of the data that's out there and hopefully in the best interest of the children. So the second part of the change that we're requesting is actually the establishment of a commission. And it really goes back to the fact that everybody that was involved in this process was a little bit frustrated that the statute or the guidelines hadn't been updated since 2004. And the statute hadn't been looked at since 2001, I believe. So there really was no mechanism to make that happen. So they felt strongly that they wanted to have this group come together on a regular basis to at least evaluate the guidelines as new technology comes up or as new research comes up to show that, okay, those devices that previously we said maybe aren't the best thing for that age, there's been improvements to them, maybe there are better now, and this maybe is the most efficient tool to use. So they wanted to make sure that was an option. So this commission that they're talking about, they did also want to recommend the fact that it's not compensated. They didn't want to have an effect on the budget. They didn't want to put anything on the schools, the Department of Education, or the state. So it is a volunteer commission, but they just wanted to have a mechanism in place so that something does happen on a regular basis to review those standards and make sure that if there's changes needed, that they can take care of it. The other thing I think that's important to that is that it also, part of their task is to develop the forms and kind of collect the data. So looking at what kind of data that's out there. I know the school nurses, when they talk, we'll talk a little bit about the research that they've done, but one of the pieces I think that's fundamental is finding out, so if a school nurse refers a child for a vision screening or other medical service, are they actually getting that care? And I know different schools have different policies on that, but how do we make sure that a child does get the care, or at least they have that? And if they don't get the care, what are the barriers to that? Is it because it's a financial barrier? Is it because they can't get there? And then if that's the case, the commission is also tasked with saying, here are some resources out there in the community, like our foundation that we have that pays for transportation or eyeglasses, or there's other charitable organizations that do the same kind of thing. So that's really what the commission was for. It's another layer in there. I know that there's some concern about having another layer sort of government, but it really is designed to make sure that this doesn't go another 15 or 20 years before it's reviewed. And the idea was that it should be, shouldn't have a fiscal note to it, that it is not a cost to the state. Or if it is a very minimal one at that. So with that, I really appreciate the opportunity. As she mentioned, this bill did pass the House in 2019. It was through this committee in 2020, but then COVID happened just like everything else, and we're starting over again. So we appreciate your support. I am not an expert when it comes to school screenings. I can represent the optometric community. I think Cindy is on to talk about the school nurse process. But if you have any questions, I'd be happy to take them at the appropriate time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Mark Tallman, Associate Executive Director, Kansas Association of School Boards. Welcome, Mark.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair. Can you hear me okay today?
Hang on a second.
Hello?
Okay. Put your volume up a little on your computer.
Is that better now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I will be very brief, echoing what the previous conferee said. I am not an expert in this area at all, but this is a bill that has been around for several years. As you know, KSB's Delegate Assembly has adopted kind of a general position to support ways to address identified student health and safety issues. This certainly is one. As this bill has been around, we've not heard any concerns from our membership that it would be a problem. It seems to be something just designed to kind of update and modernize. We don't have a specific position on the establishment of a task force or the commission that's set up. But again, if the goal is just to try to make sure we don't fall behind in this area, that seems to make sense as well, especially if there's not an additional cost. So simply want to support the bill and answer questions at the appropriate time.
Very much. Next up, we have Cindy Tedder. She has a MS Ed, a BSE, BSN, RM. She is our most educated individual testifying today. She's an early childhood special ed school nurse for the Olathe Public Schools. So, Cindy, bring us up to date. We don't think your mic's on. Microphone is not on. We can't hear you, Cindy. It appears that your mic is muted.
Can you hear me?
Hear you now. Yes, thank you.
Now?
Yes, we are. Hello.
Good heaven.
We can't hear you. We did before, but we can't now.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Still no?
Yes. We can. Yes, we can. We need you to unmute. We could hear you when you unmuted, but now you're muted again.
Am I? I on now?
You are.
Okay, yay. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know what was going on. I was having some connection issues there for a minute too, so I'm not sure. But anyway, as Todd and the other two have already said, they've said many things that I was going to talk about. But I think the most important piece of this whole piece of updating the statutes includes updating to current evidence-based practice and guidance and deleting information in the statutes that no longer is part of that. And that includes, of course, that Snellen test. And so those most current options for screening include LEA symbols, HOTV, the LEA numbers, Sloan letters, and the different types of electronic options, which are the SPOT, the SureSight, the Plus Optics, and the RetinaMax. And I think when you that whole list, you realize that's a lot of different types of screening tests that are available. And those aren't the only ones, but those are the ones that are most evidence-based at this time. And we have the scientific research to show that that is what we should be using. And when we think of the collectiveness over just 5 years, pretty drastically over even just 5 years. And with the commission in place, the task force, the Vision Coalition is there to help us make sure that those screening devices and different types of research is sought out and used appropriately to provide, our Kansas students the best vision health options available through screening. The other thing that this update will do is bring Kansas in compliance with the ages at which vision screening should occur, according to the American Academy of Pediatrics and the Bright Futures periodicity schedule. And that includes ages 6, 8, 10, 12, and 15, as well as birth through 6, and the birth through 6 is annually. It also allows for the screenings to follow the Kansas hearing screening schedule in the upper levels, including the middle and high school screening, just one time. And that way we're not overdoing it, we're not underdoing it. And then, of course, along with it, we're able to do vision screening at any time a parent requests it, any time a family would want any kind of help with it, as well as a teacher, or if they need it for their IEP or any kind of special education needs. It also highlights the need for referral and follow-up to ensure vision health is met. And this oftentimes is where things break down. It may not be that we're not getting the vision screening done. In fact, we're doing a fairly good job of that. I think if you go to your page 2, you'll see on number 2 and the supporting information that you have, you'll notice that up in 3, basically everyone is screening ages 3, 4, and 5. And so when we look at that, we know that it's not for lack of screening. It's just a matter of, are they getting it done and getting it followed up? So when we go to page 4, page 4, yes, number 5, you'll see that's only 19.6% are actually getting the referral completed. And when we look at that, the vision screening is not just the screening itself, it includes an entire program. And this is where the school nurse comes into play to provide the entire programming that's needed to complete the vision screening incomplete. So if you do the vision screening, that's great. We need someone that may need some help, and we refer them and they go to the eye doctor. But do they ever actually follow through and get the glasses? Do they actually get the follow-up that they need? Some children need to have a 6-month follow-up, and so that is necessary as well. So that also highlights the need for that. And another piece of this is that annual screening for students participating in ID Part B, as well as increased screening in lower grades, highlighting those needs for speed and the increased incidence of amblyopia. And amblyopia is one thing that happens to younger children pretty frequently, and it's the loss of vision at the brain level in one of the eyes, and it provides insufficient stimulation during development, and it can lead to permanent vision loss if it's not detected early enough and treated. And then, of course, it also establishes the commission, and this really helps do so many things. It helps the needed period of guiding resources updated and monitoring for improved vision health outcomes in our Kansas communities, such as the referral completion rates that we did just discuss. So as of 2020, Kansas is one of 40 states nationally with vision guidelines and statutes for school-aged children. There are only 26 states with preschool vision guidelines and statutes. Unfortunately, Kansas currently is not on that list. Although our current statutes are old and in need of revision and updates, updating and revising the current vision screening statutes would allow recognition of the importance of evidence-based practice and the use of scientific evidence known today. We ask for your support in passing Senate Bill 62.
Thank you for your testimony. Committee, we do have one written letter from a proponent, and we have, that would be Sharon Morris, Kansas Director of National Association of School Nurses. We do have a letter, a neutral letter written by Dina Horst and Ben Jones, legislative liaisons for the Kansas State Board of Education. What questions does the committee have for our proponents that were here? Senator Petty.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And this is a question for Cindy. And Cindy, I just was curious, and thanks for your presentation, but I wanted to know, does the Olathe School District have a nurse in every elementary building?
We actually do, yes.
Because I think that's so important when you talk about you mentioned about not just the screenings, but the follow through. Thank you.
Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Not sure who my question's for. I understand that this isn't affecting the state cost, but I wondered, and I looked at the fiscal note, I wondered how does this affect the school's cost or resources? Thank you.
Mark, did you want to address that, or Cindy, did you want to address that from the context of how it might impact the Olathe schools? As an example. I need you to unmute Cindy, please.
Okay. Are we there now? I'm able to discuss that. I think generally speaking, we were supposed to be screening every 2 years. This takes the burden off our middle school and high school students or school nurses, where school nurses have more students at that level, or levels would. So it actually helps as far as screening goes. It's not as often.
Any other questions? Senator Erickson.
Madam
Thank you,
Chair.
Madam Chair, and I apologize if this is in here or has been addressed, but We know we're in an unusual time with the pandemic and many students haven't been in school for a full calendar year. Does this bill make provision for if those students, how would you screen students who are not physically present in the school system, I guess? And does this bill allow for that? Thank you, Madam Chair.
Can you speak to that?
Madam Chair, this is Mark. Did you want Cindy to speak to that, or?
Did you have a comment for that? Did you have something that you wanted to share on that?
Madam Chair, this is Mark Tallman. Were you asking me? I'm having trouble.
Cindy, I'll ask you, because you are a member of the Kansas School Nurses Organization. Has that organization as a group addressed how they're handling this issue during COVID testing?
So could you repeat the question?
My question is, what have the school nurses this year with COVID, what have they done to address scheduling for getting kids screened and tested? Were you able to hear the question?
Hear the main part of the question. All I heard was, what's the pandemic of schools?
The question is, what have school nurses done to address the issue of screenings throughout the pandemic, where kids have been in and out, not necessarily in class on a regular basis?
Okay, I think I understand the question. The question was, what are school nurses doing for students that are at home during the pandemic for screening? If that was the question. The Prevent Blindness, the National Prevent Blindness had put out some documents requiring, well, not requiring, but with some guidelines how to handle that. So students that we did not have screened from the year before, or they were new, we were referring them either to their own personal eye doctor, or we would set up times for them to come to the building, and they would come in and we would do the vision screening there along with our hearing screening. Now in Olathe, we have a district audiologist. I don't know that all districts have that, but in our district, we have a district audiologist. So our district audiologist and a school nurse do those screenings together on per appointment scheduled if the parent wants, or they have the choice to go to their own personal ENT or audiologist and eye doctor.
Thank you very much. Committee, any other questions? Seeing none, I am going to close Senate Bill 62 hearing. At this time, committee, I would like us to turn to Senate Bill 43, and we'll start working that bill. Thank you very much for those that were with us to testify today for Senate Bill 62. So committee, as we work on Senate Bill 43, Tamara, if you want to give us a brief overview of the bill, that would be helpful.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Senate Bill 43 would establish the Kansas Promise Scholarship Program. This is a last dollar scholarship program that would award scholarships to students who enroll in a 2-year associate degree program or a career and technical education certificate or standalone program within the following fields: information technology and security, physical and mental health care, or advanced manufacturing and building trades. Kansas community colleges, technical colleges, and not-for-profit independent institutions who offer those types of programs would be eligible to provide these scholarships. As a condition of receiving the scholarship, the student would have to live and work in Kansas after completion of the program or after the completion of their continued education, and the program would be administered by the Board of Regents. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions on the overview that Tamara just gave us? Seeing none, I'd like to start with our first amendment. And Tamara, if you can pull up balloon number 6, which is addressing a request for some cleanup language from KACCT. The amendment number 6. Committee, I'll just explain it on in section B. It clarifies graduated from an accredited Kansas public or private secondary school within the preceding 12 months. Also completed requirements for graduation at a non-accredited private secondary school within the preceding 12 months. Attended an accredited Kansas public or private secondary school or non-accredited private school and obtained a high school equivalency certificate within the preceding 12 months, or is a dependent of a child of a military service member permanently stationed in another state within the preceding 12 months graduated from any out-of-state secondary school or obtained the high school equivalency certificate. So it just is making sure that folks understand what that time frame is for an individual that would be an eligible student and is a resident of Kansas. Are there any questions about the amendment? Senator O'Shea.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was this your amendment?
I am bringing this amendment.
Thank you.
Yes. This was an amendment that was a request of Kansas Association of Community College Trustees to clarify. And so I'm bringing that forward. Any other questions on the amendment? Thank you. We have a motion from Senator Petty. Do we have a second? Second from Senator Straub. All those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Abstention? The amendment passes. I'd now like us to move Tamara to balloon number 2. Told you balloon number 2, didn't I? Tamara, I meant balloon number 1. My mistake, I apologize. Second in my list. And for the time. Committee, this balloon amendment gives us a definition for a part-time student. And the part-time student means a student who is enrolled for 6 credit hours or more in a semester and not enrolled as a full-time student. Again, this request of clarifying language came from Kansas Association of Community College Trustees. Are there any questions on this amendment? Petty? I'll move your minute. Thank you. Senator Petty moves the amendment. Do we have a second? Second from Senator Sykes. All those in favor of amendment for the part-time student definition, say aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Tamara, I would like us to move to balloon number 3. As we're getting that uploaded. This is an amendment that we had talked about during the hearing, and that had to do with, we have the list of the different fields or areas of study, and this adds to the list early childhood education and development. You're about to see that it actually appears on two different pages, on page 2 and page 3. Roche.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Was this from you, from the,
The balloon amendments that I'm working through are my amendments that I'm just bringing to
okay,
the committee.
that one also suggested by another group or
That was
for context?
a part of the discussion in our committee.
Thank you.
Questions about this amendment? Petty? Have a second? We have a motion from Senator Petty and a second from Senator Sykes. Didn't see any other questions. So all those in favor, please say aye. Opposed? Amendment passes. Tamara, could you please bring up balloon number 7? received that. There we go. Committee, this balloon again was a request of KACCT. And it simply identifies that if an eligible student enrolls for the scholarship in an eligible program at an eligible institution. So, yep, the student's eligible with the criteria. Yep, it's a program that's eligible and it's an institution that's eligible. The scholarship amount shall be based on the average cost of tuition, mandatory fees, and the cost of books and required materials for the program offered by the eligible institutions described in section 1. It's simply saying that's what they're going to base that scholarship on, is going to be that average cost of those different items. Any questions about the amendment? Senator Petty.
So I see where this is going in the bill. Is it just saying it's already been said? It's already been said in the sentence above. Just clarifying that it's an eligible. See what I'm saying? It says the scholarship amount shall be the aggregate amount of tuition, required fees, the cost of books, but now we're adding if an eligible student enrolls. So it's basically restating that, but just saying it's eligible.
Is that all of those three different things, they have to be eligible. So it's just re-clarifying.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
what this is doing is it's specifying that for the private not-for-profit institutions that offer these programs, the scholarship amount for those not-for-profit institutions will be the average at the community colleges and technical colleges that offer those same programs.
That, correct me if I'm wrong, Tamara, that is consistent with what we do with the nursing scholarships and other scholarships that we have through the state.
I will have to double check on that, but this provision was in the Promise and Rise scholarship programs from last year.
Senator Petty.
Thank you. So Tamara helped, I think, to clarify that. So this just guarantee or just assures that it's the average of what's, whether it's our colleges or whether it's the private institutions that are.
And I did misspeak when I was clarifying before. If you're attending a private, what is made available is the average of what is made available for the public. It's the average.
Thank you.
Other questions? Seeing none, do I have a motion on this amendment? Do I have a second? Senator Petty? All those in favor say aye. Motion passes. Tamara, can you please pull up balloon number 8? Great. Balloon number 8 was guardrails. This is an amendment that I drafted, and the guardrails are quite specific. They are also in keeping with what is being made available in other states that have Promise Act legislation. And we do know that it is set up right now that the Promise Act would be a first come, first serve. But what this does is it indicates it shall only be awarded to an eligible student whose family household income equals $100,000 or less for a family of two, $150,000 or less for a family of three, and for household sizes above three, a household income that is equal or less than the family of three amount plus 400 or $4,800 for each additional family member. Promise scholarships may be awarded to eligible students whose family household income exceeds such amounts only if scholarship monies remain in the Promise Scholarship Program Fund during the award year after awarding all other scholarships pursuant to this section. So what this does is it factors into, we've spent time in the committee talking about a child that would be eligible for free lunch. And we know that typically if that child and that family fill out FAFSA, FAFSA would pay for all of the education. So this sets the guardrails for those individuals that are just above what would be FAFSA paying all. And so this allows so that people really kind of understand, those that are able to pay for their education, they'll be paying for their education. But for those that we know would struggle and perhaps don't even apply to attend college or enter into any of these programs, this really helps to set that criteria. And again, it's guardrails that are used that are, in fact, these particular guidelines were found in a dozen other Promise Acts within the state. So it's very consistent with what's being done. Are there any questions about this amendment? Senator Sykes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to clarify, and this is my, if a student, if their family was not, if they were outside of those parameters, but they had ceased relations with the family, how would that affect that student?
If they weren't in let's say it's a 20-year-old, they would not more than likely be, would be emancipated, if you will. So they would fit into that criteria. They would be that individual. And so they would fill out the FAFSA, and I would say they would more than likely be eligible. So if they are not dependents of the parents, then they are applying as for their own income in that FAFSA process. Senator Petty.
Thank you. And my question was along that same line. So I notice in this amendment, it says, except as otherwise provided in this paragraph. So is that you're older? So does that population spoken to otherwise, or is it just?
If they're an individual and they are independent, they're still eligible, and their family household income would be their own income as an individual.
That would apply even though it's not spoken to.
Well, what makes up a household is whether they are dependent parents or if they are independent. So FAFSA, when you go through that process, it will ask many, many questions, but one of them, how many people are in your household? And so if you're a 21-year-old and you are not in someone else's household, then it will be based on, then you are a single person household. You might be a recent high school graduate, you're 18 years old, you live at home, you have a single parent and 3 siblings. And so that's why that additional household income or allowance of that $4,800, that's how that would be factored in. Senator Sykes, second. Senator Petty. All those in favor say aye. Opposed? Amendment passes. Committee, are there other amendments? Senator Petty.
Almost all of my amendments, but
Madam Chair, I couldn't hear any of that. I apologize.
Tamara, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So Tamara, this is Senator Petty, and I have an amendment that is on page 3 of the bill.
This might be the balloon that you accidentally received a few minutes ago. It was balloon 2.
Do we already have it, Cindy, on it?
No, I think you pulled it up, Tamara, but Cindy did not send it to us, so we're waiting for that.
Got it. Thank you.
Chair, this one is pretty simple. I could just say what it is.
You may go ahead and tell us what it is as we watch for it.
Okay. So if you are looking at the bill, this amendment is at the bottom of page 3, and it deals with the reporting. And so since this program, when it's, this is it.
Is this a date change?
It is a date change. So it changes the reporting date from 22, January 15 to 22 to 23. And that's only because there actually wouldn't be any information in 22.
That's just, we've heard that before in other committees as well as this, where you make the date so that we have an opportunity to cull together the information and then present it to us. I think we talked about that yesterday with regard to the date. So that in that case, it was the Department of Education would have the opportunity to put information together. Do we have a motion on the amendment? Sykes, we have a second from Senator O'Shea. Those in favor say aye. Opposed? The amendment is passed. Committee, I hate to spoil this. I'm not sure if we have other amendments. I just got a nod, we have other amendments, but we are already a little past time, and so I am going to have us adjourn. We will try and carve out time either Monday or Tuesday. Now, keep in mind, next week we're working on budget, but we will try and carve out time so that we can complete our work on Senate Bill 43 and get that amended as the committee finds fit so that we can move it out and get it on our Senate floor. Thank you very much. Our meeting is adjourned.